Good evening, and welcome to our special weather news broadcast today. The middle days of September 2025 are witnessing a weather picture full of volatility and unlike what we usually expect for this time of year. Out in the Atlantic, a massive tropical wave that has just emerged off the coast of Africa carries a very high risk of developing into Tropical Storm Gabrielle, the next named storm on this year's hurricane list. Major forecast models such as GFS and Euro both agree that this system could intensify into a storm, possibly even reaching hurricane strength within the next 7 to 10 days. According to the latest update from the U.S. National Hurricane Center, the probability of tropical cyclone formation has risen to 80%, a very high figure, signaling that the appearance of Gabrielle is now only a matter of time. This marks a clear contrast with a tropical wave more than a week ago, which was expected to strengthen but ultimately failed due to the lack of a well-defined circulation. This time, moisture and vortex signatures show a much stronger foundation for development. One remarkable feature is the enormous size of this wave. While that might seem to make it more dangerous, in fact such systems often take longer to consolidate because it is harder for them to spin up a compact core. Experts note that the question is not if a center will close off, but when. For that reason, Gabrielle's formation is seen as virtually certain, only the timing remains unclear. Model scenarios currently present different perspectives. The European model, ECMWF, suggests that over the next 48 hours the system will remain a broad low. But by late this week the circulation begins tightening, with pressure dropping to around 992 MB, equivalent to a strong tropical storm nearing hurricane status. Its projected track is fairly clear, a quick turn northward, lifting into the North Atlantic and sparing the Caribbean, though possibly brushing near Bermuda. The GFS, meanwhile, is more aggressive. It keeps the system disorganized longer at first, but once consolidated it deepens rapidly, dropping to about 985 MB. A Category 1 to 2 hurricane by September 22 to 23. Like the Euro, GFS shows a recurvature into the North Atlantic with no U.S. or Caribbean landfall, though forecasters remain cautious since GFS often exaggerates systems linked to the Central American gyre. Icon depicts a scenario similar to Euro but with weaker intensity. Interestingly, the Euro AI, which correctly predicted the earlier wave's collapse, is skeptical again, projecting little more than a weak disturbance dissipating in dry air. This is a reminder that no single model is absolutely correct, and all scenarios must be monitored. Looking at ensemble forecasts, most members agree Gabrielle will curve north, but a small minority keep it on a lower track, skimming the Caribbean or even approaching the Bahamas. This means forecasters cannot yet fully rule out a land impact, although the current probability remains low. While Gabrielle has not yet formed, the Caribbean continues to face smaller waves bringing localized downpours and thunderstorms. Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and parts of Central America are forecast to receive 50 to 150 millimeters of rain, with localized totals of 200 to 250 millimeters in Honduras, Belize, and Jamaica. These are not directly tied to Gabrielle, but still raise flood and landslide risks. Over the Gulf of Mexico, GFS has repeatedly hinted that the Central American gyre might spin up a system, but Euro and Icon do not support this outcome because of dry air and strong wind shear. Nevertheless, the Western Caribbean and Southern Gulf remain areas to watch closely in late September. Along the U.S. southeast coast, a weak coastal low off North Carolina is developing slowly. It is not considered a major threat but could bring extended rainfall to Virginia, Maryland, and possibly New Jersey. Florida, especially from Orlando southward, will continue to see daily storms, with localized flooding possible in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, Miami. The odds of development for a tropical wave swirling in the Atlantic continue to grow, and the National Hurricane Center, NHC, has designated the organizing system as Invest 92L. The term, INVEST, is simply a naming convention used by the NHC to identify areas it is investigating for possible development into a tropical depression or tropical storm within the next 7 days. The NHC is giving the system a high chance of developing into at least a tropical depression, or even tropical storm Gabrielle, by later this week. And some computer forecast models show the system strengthening into a hurricane. Across the continental United States, the weather picture is also sharply divided. The West and the Rockies are under the influence of a strong trough, triggering severe thunderstorms with large hail in Montana, the Dakotas, and Wyoming. In Colorado and New Mexico, persistent rains could cause flash flooding in mountain valleys. Meanwhile, the Central Plains and Midwest sit under a narrow but strong ridge of high pressure, pushing temperatures in Missouri, Iowa, and Illinois to 35 to 40 degrees Celsius, 95 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, with even higher heat indices outdoors. This marks a resurgence of summer-like heat just before fall officially begins. In contrast, the Northeast is enjoying crisp autumn weather, with daytime highs of 22 to 27 degrees Celsius, 72 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit, and nighttime lows of 12 to 16 degrees Celsius, 54 to 61 degrees Fahrenheit. However, prolonged dryness is raising major concern. Many New England states have slipped into severe drought, potentially impacting the fall foliage season. Across the rest of the South and Southeast, aside from Florida's storms, conditions remain typically hot and humid with scattered afternoon thunderstorms, but no major organized systems. Looking toward the mid-range, meteorologists are monitoring the Madden-Julian Oscillation, MJO. In early September, the MJO was in a sinking air phase, unfavorable for storm formation, which partly explains the unusual quiet even during the heart of hurricane season. But between September 15 to 20, potential vorticity maps indicate a transition to a rising air phase across the Atlantic and Caribbean. This suggests increased storm activity in the main development region, potential homegrown systems in the Gulf of Mexico or near the U.S. southeast coast, and enhanced rainfall across the Caribbean. At the same time, a surge of cold air from Canada is forecast to push south late in the month, clashing with lingering summer heat, a recipe for early winter-type storms in the north and severe thunderstorms in parts of Central America. All these factors combine to paint a September weather picture that is highly unusual. On the one hand, Gabrielle appears poised to become a major storm offshore with the main scenario favoring a curve out to sea. On the other hand, the Caribbean and southeast U.S. must still contend with smaller waves and coastal lows. Across the mainland U.S., the mix of extreme heat, hailstorms, flash floods, and incoming cold air will make the coming week's climate extremely complex. Ladies and gentlemen, weather can change within just a few hours. Staying tuned to forecasts and preparing in advance remain the keys to reducing risk. Thank you for joining us. We wish you a safe evening, and we'll see you again in our next broadcast.